Okay. So I would like to thank all attendees and panelists for taking our time in the middle of the week for today's exciting conversation. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder of TomoClub.org. It's a game-based social emotional learning curriculum where we solve for student engagement and life skill development through exciting multiplayer games that students and teachers love. So today we are going to talk about AI. So we all know AI is rapidly transforming, whether it's a world of work or learning, and schools need to act now to prepare our students. But how do we do that effectively while staying true to the core educational values? But the question is that why are you discussing it today? Why this conversation matters. It matters because, as per the recent analysis, 86% of our students are already using AI in their studies. With 24% of them reporting daily usage to 54% using it at least once a week. So the numbers are quite high and we have to talk about it. So today we will explore the urgent steps that school leaders must take to ensure that our students are future ready, AI literate, and equipped with essential skills. So please welcome Shauna Anderson. Um, she's an educator and administrator. Let me just add, sorry, yeah. She's an educator and administrator at South Sutter Charter School, Sacramento, for more than 20 years. And she's also a co-founder of her new venture in Vara. We have Melvin Brown. He's a former superintendent at Montgomery, Alabama Public Schools, and he's currently vice president at Bailey Educational Group. And we also have Al Lewis, who is a superintendent of schools at Weymouth Township School District. So thank you, everyone. And before we start our talk, I would like you to guys to share a quick brief about yourself as well. Shauna, you can go first.
Okay, thanks. Like Avinash said, I'm happy to be here. I've been with South Sutter for about 20 years. Our model is an innovative, personalized learning charter school where kids learn at home and in their community. When the pandemic hit, we've started Invada to kind of help those families who wanted to explore personalized learning, learning at home, learning in their community. I live in the Sacramento area and I have six children, homeschooled them on and off throughout the years, kind of depending on the kid, depending on my capacity, depending on the year, but really focus on trying to give them autonomy in their learning and help them to learn this future ready skills. So, at the school at South Sutter, I'm kind of the de facto tech person and I host Coffee and Computers every Friday with our teachers, and AI has been a very hot topic. Lots of nerves around it, lots of questions, and so just helping teachers to have an open mind. It's been good.
Thank you so much for that. Al?
All right, folks. My name's Al Lewis. I'm the superintendent of Weymouth Township School District, which is in southern New Jersey. And prior to that, for 9 years, I was a STEM supervisor in New Jersey's largest K-8 school district. So I have a lot of experience implementing new technologies and growing teacher capacity to adopt new technologies. And we know that there's a lot of resistance and fear around artificial intelligence. But we also know that much like Wikipedia or graphing calculators, that the kids are adopting things at a much faster rate than the adults. So we want everybody to get ready and not be as scared of it. So personally, my wife is a visiting professor at our alma mater, Rowan University, which is also in New Jersey. She's actually a lit professor, so she uses AI in totally different ways from how I use it in my job, but still really cool to see. And both of our children are in middle school and really enjoy seeing technology through their eyes. If I need any help with AI or my phone, I just ask my son, and somehow he knows it all already. So, real excited to talk about AI with everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody, I'm Melvin Brown. I'm former superintendent of Montgomery Public Schools in Montgomery, Alabama, as well as Reynoldsburg City Schools outside of Columbus, Ohio. So I'm a two-time recovering superintendent, recovering underscore many times. I am not a techie in that I was an English teacher and high school teacher, major coming out of college. My passion, if you will, in the AI space is to make sure it doesn't become an equity issue that we have to address. So you're thinking about your typical district that has high poverty, high urban environments, high whatever numbers you want to put into the tank and talk about. Typically, those kids don't get access to many of the things they need to get access to in order to compete globally. My mission is to make sure every kid, no matter what their background is or what type of environment or community they live in, they still get access and they understand how to use these tools to their advantage. Our goal is to make sure every kid can compete with kids from all over the world, certainly not just in their neighborhood or their state or just this nation, but across the world. And it's important that our kids have access to those things so they learn, one, how to use them appropriately, and two, how to help those things enhance what they can do from an educational perspective.
No, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I think AI, whether it's Google, Gemini, or other AIs, have been under fire for being non-equitable at a lot of places, especially in image generation for different prompts specifically. But yeah, so let's kick off our today's panel discussion. But I want to start with some candid and experiential questions, before we get into some serious stuff. In the last 2 years, AI has rapidly, shown so many strides in different directions, different narratives going around. From your perspective as school leaders, what has been the most significant change? Whether it's positive or negative, what you have seen on ground happening, not on surface level talks, but in reality, the change that you guys have seen. Melvin, you can start.
Okay, I'll jump in with what I've seen. I think if it's made an impact, it hasn't made it to the classroom as of yet, in most cases, by and large. You'll see obviously some pockets of fantastic integration where kids are using it effectively and earnestly and appropriately and regularly for that matter. But you'll also see some places where there's still fear about access to those types of programs or devices or tools. And that's driven by the adults. The adults aren't comfortable with it, so therefore they don't allow the kids to have access. I think it's important that we make sure adults understand the tools that are available at their disposal and they be given support to then integrate that into the classrooms. So I think that's the piece that's missing. I haven't seen a lot of that in my travails, wherever that might take me. Lots of conversation, lots of talk, but I'm ready to see some action in terms of what that's going to look like for student outcomes.
Okay, so you haven't seen much action on ground right yet.
Not to the degree I would be like, oh, we're making huge strides. I don't see that yet.
Interesting. What about you, Al?
Yeah, so a lot of what Melvin just said really resonate with what I'm seeing as well. I would say that systematically, we're not seeing a ton of adoption. It's people who are early adopters, somewhat like G Suite, where you just have people who are just so ready to jump in the pool, and then other folks who really want to make sure the water is okay before they jump in and swim for a bit. Kids, same thing, right? We have some students who are just so ready to use it and others who aren't. And then even with school leaders that I talk to, I have some school leaders who I work with or I stay connected to, and they say, I use AI to help with my teacher evaluations. I tell it what I observed, I give it the key points, and then I let AI help me brainstorm some suggestions for these folks. And then likewise with instructors, people who say, this is amazing. I don't have to prep 50 activities anymore. I can just ask ChatGPT, hey, here's a standard I'm going to work on next week. Give me 5 ideas for a coherent week of instruction. And we have people who do amazing things with it. But like Melvin is saying, what's lacking is school leaders and district leaders from saying, here's the sandbox. Let me build this sandbox for how you can use AI. And now let's all go out and play in the sandbox for quite a bit and see how we do. That's what's truly going to drive that type of systems-wide change that I think needs to occur, right? Like I said earlier, if you talk about Wikipedia, that's what I would say is the AI of my time as a student, where every teacher is telling, please do not use this. It's not reliable. It's not good. And then very quickly, research came out that it is. And then it became such a proliferated something that's just synonymous with research. And I believe that's the future for AI in education, is that AI is going to become synonymous with DOK 1 level tasks, where we will no longer ask children to simply memorize and regurgitate. That's already been done for them with the power of artificial intelligence.
Hmm. True that. True that. Shauna?
Yeah, I love that. Echoing what they both Al and Melvin have said. I think what I've seen in our kind of unique model is teachers adopting it really quickly, being like, wow, I now have a personal secretary that can do my goals, my IEPs, my grading, but very confused about how do I use it with my kids? How do I use it with my students? What kind of things can I do? They see the effectiveness of how it can help with menial tasks,
Hmm.
but they're wanting to know like how do I teach kids to use it correctly? What can they use it for? And students are just using it, right? And so I think Al and Melvin both said like adults don't really understand it so quickly. We're like, shut it down, instead of trying to help them understand and use it. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
Hmm. No, I think I agree with that because I've been listening to not just education, but a lot of other industries as well. And so basically, we have at level one right now where large language models have been created, which are more generic, but vertical AI is going to come in, like specialized agents who's going to work for each industry. So I think in terms of real deployment, where it can work with legacy softwares, legacy curriculums, and actually make a difference at the ground level is yet to happen. So there are companies like, like I've heard about Magic School, which are trying to make it happen at the grassroots level rather than just at the general purpose AI, which people are using for their own personal benefit. But can it happen and make a change at large? I think that piece is still largely unsolved for. So yeah, I think that's good to know. But also as a school leader, you are constantly juggling multiple priorities. AI is not the topmost priority. I always know you have 20 other fires to put out on an everyday basis. But what is your biggest concern regarding education, regarding impact on education because of AI? Because it's like we are kind of observers to a massive revolution. So what is your biggest concern? Shauna, will start with you this time.
I think for me, just as a like Melvin, I was a high school English teacher. And so having you know, students writing papers with AI, right, freaks me out. How can we now assess students for what they know when they can use tools like this? So, you can't just have them write a paper. I mean, you can, but trying to figure out how to use tools or let them use those tools in an effective way. I think we have to change how we view assessing students. That's kind of the thing that has been rolling around in my head. How do we assess for what they know?
Hmm, that's interesting. Melvin or Al, what's your
Yeah, I'll
big?
jump in. That's a great point. We started some work a couple of years ago about what standards-based grading looks like, and quite frankly, they weren't ready for that conversation. We thought we had answers. At least I thought we had answers. And when we started having those discussions, then you got back to the old habits of what grading is supposed to look like, and it has to be punitive and all these other things. So, in order for these tools to help us to be more forward thinking and competent in our field, we have to become more familiar with them ourselves as adults. And we need to do so quickly so that we can convey that knowledge to kids. And this is a great way to help us change what the grading model looks like, because quite frankly, it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work, but yet we continue year after year to keep doing it. I think this gives us an opportunity to change what that looks like if we do it and learn it correctly. So that's a huge concern of mine. And as I mentioned earlier, equity is always going to be an issue for me that I'm concerned about, because I know inner city kids don't get access to so many things that kids in the suburbs do, for numbers of reasons. And we don't need to get into all of those reasons, but that's a reality. So therefore, they don't think they deserve to have them, and it doesn't become a part of who they are. So from a concern standpoint, from the superintendent's seat, one of my concerns was, and I'm not a pro in this area myself, but I want to make sure I surround myself with people who understand it well and then can help me to translate that to teachers so they can actually implement that in classrooms. So I think that's a huge obstacle, if you will, in terms of what we can accomplish or overcome in education, not to mention all the nonsensical stuff that's happening right now. We
Hmm.
won't have that conversation today.
Agreed.
I would say both of what you just said resonated with me. So I'll go in reverse chronological order here. One, just to echo what Melvin just said, which resonates very deeply with me growing up in a very diverse part of the nation where my first job was in a town that was a stop on the Underground Railroad. at the time. Kids of all colors, of all backgrounds, irregardless of where they were born, what their zip code is, what their parents did for a living, and regardless of whether they live in an inner city or a rural farm field, they all deserve equitable access to technology. That is a non-negotiable, and that is apolitical. All children deserve the fair shot that America is supposed to promise and is growing into that promise. Second to that is, like Shauna is saying, it's a little bit of you need to sharpen the saw, right? We don't just sit there sawing away at a tree with a dull saw for 50 hours. You take the time to sharpen the saw. And until we adopt AI in a meaningful way, we haven't sharpened the saw for our teachers or for our kiddos. They can slave away at a coding project where AI can do it in a heartbeat. There is no reason why we can't teach them to use a sharp saw and use AI to be the future coders of America. The reason is because the adults have not been educated on it yet. That's the missing piece. That's the burden to me that is on leadership, is to say to teachers, if this is truly, which I think anyone would argue that it is, if this is truly the future of computing and of careers, why are we not training kids on it now? If AI can spot tumors on a CAT scan at a rate that a doctor cannot, why aren't we training the future doctors of America to use AI to spot tumors? Why are we still teaching them to do it themselves? So I think there's a lot of road ahead of us. This is a really emerging cutting edge technology still, and education is notoriously a dinosaur and the last to adopt anything. So I think that's really where we're at as a nation right now, is how is the nation network of schools going to adopt AI in an actual meaningful way so that kids can use it tomorrow?
That's fantastic. No, thank you for that. I think assessments, equity, and teachers' adoption, especially when we know that, that out there in the job market, it's already been happening. So we have to prepare our kids beforehand. I think that's so important. But trust me, I've been on road hitting conferences to conferences, and I cannot be proud enough about US Department, not Department of Education, but education in general, that how every third conversation is actually about AI. I have to give it to it. I think the way conferences are happening, it's a reflection of what's happening internally in the schools, and people are talking about it. So the first step is very well received, having this conversation. The second step, of course, is acting on it. So I am very optimistic. I think people are not letting it go because it has blew them away, literally. So it's so hard to ignore, even if they want to, you know. So let's go a little bit deeper now, because I always want our panel discussions to be actually material, something which is people can take home and implement rather than just generic talk. So the first thing I want to talk very straight to the point is, how can school ensure that AI become an asset and not a threat? We all have talked about both sides. How to make it a sure shot asset at the school leadership level. So what are your thoughts on that? Anybody can take this.
Jump in. I think as school leaders, we have to be explicit in how we put in place expectations, how things, tools, resources are written into curriculum use and into our strategic plans to make sure those things are actually, you can view them. You can see that this is important because it's in our plan, and we have to talk about it constantly. And obviously, the training piece is tremendous. It's a tough lift to get someone who's done something for 20 years one way and say, okay, now all of a sudden next year we're going to flip it this way. We know that takes time, so we need some patience in that endeavor. While at the same time, there has to be a happy medium where we can say, okay, I can give you some grace, but we still have to get here at this point. I think that's something that we have to be very explicit about, very intentional about, and we don't let the powers that be, whoever they may be these days, pile so many things on our plates that we can't let this be a function of what we are and who we are. It's a time of trepidation in education, in many respects, particularly public education, and how we navigate those obstacles is going to be really important over the next numbers of years. This has to be part of the conversation. It has to be one of the upfront part of the conversations. I was going to talk about grades and discipline and testing and all those wonderful things. Well, if we create environments where kids feel like they have a sense of belonging and they see themselves in the curriculum and in the classroom, they're going to use tools like this to help make that more prominent for themselves. And guess what? You're going to raise test scores. So we have to understand that these things can fit hand in glove if we go about them in the right way. Unfortunately, we drag our feet or we kick and scream and we don't make nearly as much progress as we should because of other impediments that either get in our way or that we put in our way to help us not ever get to the point where we have those things implemented.
Absolutely. That's so true. Shauna, how to make
I
sure that
think
it's not a threat, it's taken as an asset?
out of that, I mean, as with anything, um, anything is a threat if you don't really understand it.
Mm.
People, technology. And so I think having an open mind and being able to, yeah, just learn about it, modeling as school leaders, modeling to our teachers, to our students that, hey, I don't know a lot about this, but I'm going to learn about it. I'm a lifelong learner. This is what you do when new things come up. I don't know about it. I'm going to learn about it. I think having kids see us learn about it is a great asset. Um, I think that uh, access, you know, talking to kids, like learning from them. Like as a teacher, like show me how you're using this because I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know how to use it. Like you said, I think was it Al about your kid using your cell phone or helping you with your cell phone, right? Helping them, it's not a threat. I think that it's actually a threat and a disservice to not teach kids about it because what worked for us when we were growing up, what the world that we grew up in is not the world that our kids are growing up in. And we cannot, as adults, use the same tools that our teachers used to teach our kids. It's just we're actually will hurt them if we do.
Mm.
And so, like to your point, Melvin, of giving kids access, it's a huge disservice to not teach kids how to, like, think about not teaching a kid how to use a calculator. It's the same thing in my head. The world is changing, and as adults, we fear that and we view it as a threat. But again, I think it's just communication, talking, learning, and modeling for our kids. That's how I think that schools and leaders can help make it an asset.
Yeah, that's very well said. Talking about it. How
Yeah,
about you?
that I agree with that assessment that everything's a threat. I mean, why do we let the kids go on the internet? There's a lot of unsavory things that aren't education on the internet. The answer is because we've recognized what a valuable resource it is, and we put guardrails in place to protect children. Same with cable television, same with video games. I mean, none of this is revolutionary, but we continue, like Melvin said, we continue to kick and scream with every new innovation that comes across the global marketplace and say, this is where we're going to draw the line. We're not going to advance the timeliness of our education today, but we will. And I believe when more assurant guardrails are put in place, I think people will feel more comfortable, and that'll probably be like a second iteration of how AI is used in schools. But we got to start simple, right? Starting somewhere with kids to say, hey, let's ask an AI chatbot to teach us about a subject. And now let's talk about how we can verify the authenticity of the information that we got back. My wife talks a lot about she'll use it in her writing courses to say, hey, ChatGPT generated the following resumes. You're applying for the same job. How would you make your resume stand out from these six artificially created ones? That's authentic learning, right? Like Shauna said about the days of just regurgitating through an essay are over. Instead, we're going to say, AI got you 80% of the way there with this essay. Now, what 20% are you going to bring to the equation? How are you going to make this something that you're proud of, that reflects your individual voice as a writer? And then same with things that are, non-humanities based, whether it's just generating ideas to help you brainstorm or whether it's taking away that DOK one level task of now we know the what, we're going to give kids the application level of that then next. And I believe that's going to be the future of it. And until folks really see its power and see its ability to save them time, I don't think folks are going to be as excited about it, but it will happen.
Hmm. No, I love that, So I've done a setting in I use GenSpark, a couple of more AI tools, and I always have put an option for every answer that AI gives to me, I want an antithesis. So my answers always, I try to balance them out so that it doesn't throw me in the direction which I want to. So I think So responsible use of AI is something which I always talk about is when I even tell my family members or teammates that how are you making sure that you're not using AI as a shortcut, but more like a part of your learning journey, by asking more thought-provoking questions, asking more something, from the fundamental first principle theory. So I think having that kind of mindset where you are looking at it as a tool, not as a replacement, simply, I think that can make sure that it's not a threat. So even in my organization itself, when we working with so many other different skill set people, we want to augment their capabilities to next level rather than making them feel threatful. And I think that's most important. So yeah, I think I got some good crazy points which I'm summarizing while I'm talking. I'm pretty sure an AI will do it better after this video call once I put it there. But yeah, still trying to make sure I'm relevant. Okay. So you guys talk about the fact that it is impacting the job market. So what do you guys think about the life skills part? We need to, of course, teach our kids that you have to work with AI. You have to treat it like a part of your journey. But apart from that, what skills I should develop or I should teach my 1-year-old kid, when he enters the school uh, in the AI driven future?
Yeah, I'll jump in first on that one. I would say it's a lot like how I taught my son about YouTube. He likes to watch different videos, like scientific videos or engineering videos, and teaching him how to recognize misinformation or things that were not generated for accuracy, but generated for entertainment. And I think that's a big piece of this is in a world where reality appears to not matter in public discourse and
Hmm.
facts can be counterfactualized with things that are easily provable to be false. I think teaching all children in all aspects of their life how to spot things that are not authentic or that are biased, I think is the key to all of this, the ethics behind it and the basic research behind AI. Because it is convenient to just say, my teacher told me to write an essay on the death penalty. Give me a 1,000 word essay. That's easy. That's something that shouldn't be of value anymore. But teaching students then how to take what is generated and ethically use it to inform their worldview instead of using it to reinforce their worldview is going to be key. And I think that's going to be something that all the way from maybe kindergarten all the way through higher education is going to be an essential piece of digital citizenship.
Hmm. That's good. Ethical use of AI. I should teach my child about that.
You mentioned the things we want to teach to our kids. I think it's important that we teach them what character looks like, what cooperation and collaboration look like, how we're in a space where you can have an opinion and I can have an opinion that can be different, but yet we could also teach our adults that. um, and I think this gives us a great opportunity to bridge the gap in terms of what differences are. We can build on our differences and we can be stronger because of our differences, but instead we tend to go into corners where our own team plays and we can only play with those kids over there. They have to be over there doing their own thing. And we don't like them. So I think we've created kind of an asinine sort of thinking in our country, dare I say our world, whereby we only want to hear what confirms what we already know. And I think AI gives us an opportunity to change those conversations and get into discussions about real information, actual factual information that impacts not only our lives personally, but our lives as a whole. And we start thinking about it from a humanistic standpoint and knowing that our job, our goal should be to build a better humanity, not just a better bank account for ourselves. Those are some of the things we have to teach our kids. And for our adults, you got to understand, I know we're afraid of change in many respects, but we know the only constant in education is change. So we have to adapt to that and recognize that the way we've always done things never worked. So why do we keep doing it and thinking all of a sudden, oh, it worked this time? No, it's not going to work. It was never designed to work for every single kid. It's our job now to take what we have and build that for every child. And in these, we have to change our mentality and change how we look at our mindsets and how we look at the world in order for that to happen. And then fight like hell to get the impediments out of the way, no matter what direction they come from.
Hmm. That's true. Definitely, definitely. Shauna.
I love that. I think about how when we were in school, right, school was the gatekeeper of education. right? Now education is available. You can get a college education on YouTube. Um, so that's, teaching kids how to find that good information, like you said, Al. I also think about like the human perspective. For me, this is really interesting. I'm a musician. So what as humans, what does AI take over and what can we as humans, what will that allow us as humans to express better? Um, and what can we as humans express better than AI? We did an exercise with some kids about like, let's write a country song. And it was like, boots and Fords and dogs and whatever. And the kids are like, this is so dumb. I'm like, well, yeah, because it's not real. It doesn't come from real experience. It doesn't come from your heart, right? So teaching kids like about what is uniquely human and what is uniquely human that's their humanity for them to express and how AI could be a tool to get rid of, a lot of the extra stuff so that they can really just develop as who they were meant to be. That's kind of what I think about. Um, yeah.
No, so this reminds me of a book I read. I'm pretty sure it's very famous. Yuval Harari's book, Homo Sapiens. And there was a mention, that how the entire British colonialism actually started. And the basic skill that they have, that the book kind of rewarded was curiosity, that they had the curiosity to explore beyond the horizon. I always embrace that. And I think I'm so glad that book stayed with me in this particular aspect, to be always curious. And sadly, I don't blame my teachers, but it used to happen that they would not be able to answer all my questions because we had limited time in the school uh, classes. So I think skill I want to teach my kid and myself is to not let that curiosity die. And especially I've seen it firsthand. I work with kids from grade 3 to grade 12, and we have seen how the amount of excitement, the curiosity for our games have, like, it literally goes exponentially down with older age groups. So the skill that I really want to make sure that it should keep on increasing other way around, right? As we grow up, because we are much more um, cognitive abilities are increasing. So in reality, my curiosity should actually increase, but it doesn't happen that way. So I think the skill I would really want kids to have right now is to ask hundreds and tens and thousands of questions without thinking about it, because AI is not gonna get irritated at all. So I think that's my feeling.
I can jump in really quick. Shauna mentioned something about authentic learning and what real life application looks like. It's so important that we do that. The thing we've done over the past 15 to 20 years is we've taught kids really well how to choose between 4 or 5 answers. That's what we created. Now, we were forced to create that. That's another conversation for another day. But that is the reality we've dealt with for 20 years. And now all of a sudden we have a generation of kids whose curiosity is gone because we've taken it from them. We got to give them opportunities to learn information in real time and then apply it in real life context. If we continue to fail to do that, we're doing ourselves a disservice in terms of public education and certainly can't get to a point where we can have the impact on the world that we should have.
Hmm. No, I agree. I think, in fact, back in my college days, there was an open book test. I don't know if you have seen that. And I think initially I felt that it's so weird because coming from school, this just never happened. And in college, it was like all different. Like, book is right in front of you. Just go and search and see if you can do it. And I tell you, the first experience was so weird. But then I felt the power of it, because then knowing facts was not anymore the differentiator, but about how about you analyze and you remember, and you can make patterns. So I love that part, having the information at your behest always. So yeah.
And that reflects how professionals work all the time. No one just takes a guess and hope they remember, and if they don't, they fail. They research and give the answer and use it to inform their professional judgment. So we're training kids for really a workplace that existed 100 years ago still.
Yep, absolutely. So this brings me to the next question, that what does AI literacy look like in reality? So we have talked about how skills it matters in the AI, and also about how do we ensure that it doesn't become a threat. But now if the school really wants to implement it at a meaningful level, how do they do that? Anyone?
I would say let them play with it, like give them an opportunity to play with it, a sandbox. Don't limit them, let them use it. Let them use it to do essays, let them use it to tell them how to do math problems. Like, what are all the ways that you come up with that you can use it for, and collaborate and talk about it. How do you see this being a bad thing, as you know, in what are the good things about it? Just talking about it, communicating and playing with it. Like, a lot of it is just no one really knows what it is, and until you get in and actually do it, and teachers too, they're afraid of it. And so it's just learning about it. So I think learning and playing is an important piece.
Okay, so letting teachers and students play with it.
And I would say the first step is having them understand the basic fundamentals of what AI even is, because I think there's some confusion of whether AI actually means like the Internet of Things, that everything is somehow connected and shares information, and that's also not AI to a certain degree. They need to understand that AI is really just the reflection of the body of knowledge that is put out among the Internet. But that information is inherently biased because it was placed there by people. And all people have both conscious and unconscious biases and have political agendas and have personal agendas and can be wrong. And that's why it's so important for them to understand that this is really just much like we tell kids, don't just Google search something and assume the top three results are the best three results. They
Yeah.
reflect the bias of both the platform and the monetization of the internet. So we need to get kids understanding really what they're looking at first, and then teach them how to apply that to what they're doing with like hands-on projects that use AI to inform them of what they're doing. So when a kid goes and does basic internet research and then uses AI to enhance it, we need to make sure that at the end that the child is still able to report on what they've learned and how they've grown as a learner, rather than just saying, well, I let AI do it for me. Because as an adult, we would never do that. If I sat down with a teacher and said, hey, I summarized your evaluation using AI, and they said, oh, okay, well, what suggestions do you have for how I can grow as an educator? I wouldn't say, oh, I have no idea. Ask ChatGPT, right? I would have used that to inform what I said and help me as a tool, but it wouldn't replace my leadership or my expertise and what I bring to the table to help my educators grow. Likewise, kids need to also mirror that in academic setting.
Hmm.
I
True.
agree with everything Shauna and Al just said. What I might add, as far as school leaders driving change, once we expose our staffs, school people, staff, whomever, to the tools that are available, then we have to give them space to use them. So if we have a goal, maybe it's one per quarter, and everybody, this is non-evaluative. I'm not coming in to observe you for for your overall evaluation. We just want you to use it and then see what happens. And if you see that they discover they'll enjoy it, if they see the kids enjoying it, then we know something's right, especially if they're using it appropriately and learning it from it. If they're just playing with it and we're not exposed in the right way, maybe it becomes a tool that's not useful. But we know that's not what good teachers do. They're going to take the tool and appropriate it to kids in classrooms and allow them to use it in the best possible way and try to engage them in the way that they need to be engaged in order to learn it. That's what's missing. We're so attracted to standards and implementation that we just focus on pedagogy, never on how content translates into real life context. We have to change what that mindset looks like and is. And I think as school leaders, we have to be at the front of the line, leading that charge so we can make those changes happen.
But guys, tell me one thing, like the first time digitization happened, I'm pretty sure even for the people that must be a big resistance to it, right? To from pen and paper to digitization on a computer or a laptop. But wasn't that enforced in a way? It wasn't like it wasn't given them a free will. Okay, if you want to do it on computer, it's your choice, or you can do it on your paper. It was enforced, as I know. So don't you see that there's a similarity that we have to do in an AI case as well? Because if in a school setting, if we don't put it out a deterministic goal, that we have to have, let's say, personalized plans for students made through AI, or we need to have our curriculum or our grading systems led by AI, we would be left behind as a, because right now we are expecting this content to be heard by school leaders who have to do things. What are your thoughts on that? Does it need to be enforced, or does it need to be just go with the flow? Because flow is going to be resisted.
Think about an example of the Waldorf model. They are very against technology for beautiful reasons. I love the Waldorf philosophy. But here in California, we have our state assessment, which is computerized. So the kids that have never used a computer are now at a disadvantage. It doesn't mean that they're not smart enough. They probably do know the answers to a lot of the questions, but they don't know how to use the tool to take that test.
Mhm.
And so now, now at the Waldorf school where my kids go to, they do computer skills, which is, kind of against the Waldorf philosophy, but it's what they need to succeed. So I think it's like that mandatory, yeah, this is the world that the kids are in now.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it has to be in some regard, not legislated, but mandated, so to speak. And it has to be some kind of happy medium about what you have to do versus what you don't have to do. You can't just drive it down everyone's throats. You have to be measured about how to go about doing it and let it slowly integrate. But you're so right. I mean, the tool's right there at your disposal. You just have to know how to use it. Just as an example, you have to go from point A to point B and you need to drive a car. There's a car sitting in the driveway, but you can't drive it. I mean, it makes no sense. Let's go learn to drive that car. So I think that's kind of the mentality we have to develop so that they know what's available to them. I think when teachers hear AI, there are all these things that pop out and they don't know specifically what that means. It's just one big conglomeration of things that they're thinking about, not necessarily specific tools that they can use to be able to enhance classroom instruction. We have to make that a little more simplistic and reachable and it's accessible for teachers as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, I also same things like that. There has to be some specific goals, and schools are taking that up. I think they're starting small. They're implementing it in phases. With the basic beginning of teacher training, which Al also mentioned. That we have to explain the origin of it, uh, how it's created, how the answers that AI is giving is kind of biased. So you have to make sense out of it. You don't need to blatantly just follow it, so that kind of AI literacy also matters. So yeah, that's super amazing points by all of you on that. Um, so this is a little generic question again. I think what steps school leaders should take today to future-proof learning? Now we're talking about student level because we have talked about administrative level, but for the students, we have our set core curriculums, we have state standards, we have test scores that we have to achieve as a school. But how do we future proof their learning? Anybody want to volunteer?
I'll jump in. Giving kids authentic learning has to happen in classrooms. It can't be about memorize the presidents in order and then regurgitate that back on a test. I can just Google that. Why do I have to memorize that? It makes no sense. So we have to show the lack of utility in some of the tools or some of the processes that we've used in the past, how they don't impact education, they don't impact learning. They may impact memorization, but as soon as I deliver that list, it's gone out of my head. So kids have to have experiences with their learning in order for that learning to stick. If we can get that to be the predominant mindset of educators, we can move a bunch of things out of the way in order to get kids to learn. I also think it helps us to cover numbers of different standards, different subjects at the same time. Now, all of a sudden, not only are we being more productive in what we do from an educational perspective, we're being more efficient. I think it saves time and gives us a better opportunity to get kids across the finish line. But it's all about shifting our mindset and saying, how can we do this better? We're so married to this agrarian model of education where the schedule's regimented and you go from point one class to the other and they're explicit content areas. We have to find ways to bridge. Who says we have to use school hours that way? Why can't we know we have a minimum number of hours we have to teach. We know what that looks like. While at the same time, we can use our schedules and construct them any way we want so that we have English teachers partnering with social studies teachers, and all of a sudden we have common ideas and subjects and projects we can put together. So we have to be more creative in many respects to get out of our own way.
Hmm. So being creative with students set curriculum or schedule makes
Yeah,
sense.
I agree. I think the burden is on district leaders to set a vision collaboratively with school leaders and then communicate that vision, right? We talk all the time about superintendents are the chief storyteller of each district, right? In both directions, right? They listen to the story of how the district is doing and they report that out to the public. And then likewise, they listen to the temperature of the public and report that back to the school community. And I think until leaders set a vision for each of their schools or workplaces, that AI is an integral part of what we're doing because it's going to be an integral part of what our students go out into. I don't think things will change. Like Melvin saying, I think there needs to be some drive legislatively, whether from the federal office or whether from state offices, and with that needs to come funding, because we certainly don't need any more unfunded mandates, that's for sure. And we need folks to say, who can we partner with, right? If schools lack an internal stakeholder who is an early adopter or a driver of AI, well, there are a lot of people out there who are, right? And how can we partner with them? How do we update our curriculum to reflect AI, right? I mean, we're still trying to catch up to 3D printing, and that's been out for like 20 years. So the
Hmm.
problem isn't that the time is here, it's the time is already soon passing, and we need to get on this boat before it gets too far away from the dock. And I think when there's more of a like fire lit under districts, both leadership wise and also like mandate wise, I think that's when we're going to see real change. And I think the burden there is like that's the first step in. I mean, we're never going to future proof learning because the future is going to constantly evolve. But if we want to future proof today's students and say, we did an adequate job preparing you today for what is unknown tomorrow, I think that's what needs to change immediately is a vision that includes AI and not, plays into the fear mongering of how awful the world is going to be become because of artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. I think the partnership with other organization is a definitely key point to remember here. Shauna?
Yeah, I come at it from like the personalized learning, almost like our classrooms even need it anymore. Um, as they have been in the past, right? Like we have a community where we can go out and learn from people. We have Zoom where I can Zoom with Avinash in India and learn from him. We have these tools that we didn't have before. If Netflix can figure out what I like to watch, like why is education not personalized like that? We have the tools now. So I see AI as a way to, yeah, personalized learning to make it meaningful for kids so that they can learn what they want, learn what they need to learn through the lens of what their interests are. And we can do that, but it's so hard to do that in a traditional educational model. It's so hard to standardize education. Kids will hear, whatever lesson you present, every kid is going to hear it differently through their own lens. And so um, we need to figure out a way to teach in a personalized way that hits every kid, that hits their heart, that figures out what they need to give to the world and helps them use the tools to get it out there. That's what I think education is. And the old model of education worked for us. It doesn't work anymore, like we've all said. And so trying to figure that out is, I think, the biggest challenge right now.
No, absolutely. I think when you talk about future proofing of our students, I will definitely be big advocate about the fact that they have to learn to be flexible and adaptive. So it can be called under different curriculum or different skill set, whether it's social emotional learning or it is leadership development or character development. But it's about how they can be ready for a fast changing world, because things are never going to be constant. As Melvin said, that it has to be constantly evolving, and you need to evolve, especially when we have to evolve as a working professional. This, that flexibility can't be just ignored. So I think a lot of curriculums are working on these directions of how to make students more socially and emotionally intelligent. And of course, different pedagogies are out there, which I think are going to be relevant for it. Um, so definitely, this brings me to my last question to my panelist, and of course, then I'll let attend some questions as well. If you had to give one piece of advice to school leaders who are navigating this disruption, you know. We have talked about from the fundamental levels, giving it time, being more receptive to it at the student level also. But if you have to give one piece of advice, if somebody is really right now not able to comprehend, so how they should start?
I think for me, it's be open-minded and curious, um, and just recognize that the world that we grew up in is different than what the world is now. Um, I think that we need to, if you don't change now, you're going to be left behind. No, you've already pretty much been left behind, honestly. So be forward thinking, and you're going to find a lot of resistance from teachers, but give them the space to explore and play and not be punished or, you know, have punitive things where they can't explore and learn. So I give them the space to learn and make mistakes and fail and grow. I think is so important. So that's what I would say.
I don't
Absolutely.
think I can say it any better than that. The first thing that popped into my head is making sure kids know they can make mistakes. We have such a punitive system. We punish them with consequences for discipline. We punish them with grades. We punish them with privileges. We punish them with access to programs and whatever else. Those are the things we have to stop doing. And maybe it did work for the kid who went to school in 1976. Maybe it did work then. Now, however, it's a very different ballgame, and kids know they don't need us as the adults to tell them what to do. They are just as astute at doing things in many ways better than we can. So a little kind of flexibility. If the kid is going to be smarter than me in the classroom, great. You might actually save me some time and make my job easier. This is not an ego contest. It is not me trying to make sure I bestow all my knowledge upon you. We're talking about experiencing learning for real and then apply it in real life context. Therefore, egos have to get out of the way.
Perfect. Well
Yeah, I would say both those resonated with me. What Shauna said in particular reminded me of the things we say on my daughter's hockey team. I coach her girls team, and we say, face the opponent and compete with courage. You know, and that's what we're not teaching our kids. We're not teaching them to bravely go into the unknown and figure things out. Like Melvin said, like it's not an empty vessel approach. It's a constructivist approach that we're creating knowledge and building upon what we've learned. And that's what we're not doing as a system. We are instead punishing them into the fear of failure. Because if they make a misstep with technology, we accuse them of plagiarizing instead of using it as a teachable moment to teach them what plagiarism is and what borrowing ideas is and why it is not ethical. Instead, kids are just so afraid to do anything to be dinged on or get a point off their assessment score. And I would say if I was giving a school leader in particular advice, I would say that the school leader sets the tone in their building for lifelong learning. And like Shauna said, if they are not modeling how AI has made their job more efficient and more effective, and then educating their staff, who in turn educate students on how AI can make their lives more effective and more efficient, they have not set up a culture of learning. Instead, they have just created a workplace. And we have a lot of workplaces. We don't have a lot of real, true, vibrant learning environments. And that's what is sorely needed.
That's all great points. So yeah, that definitely brings us to the overall discussion. I think we did touch upon a lot of major topics. Anything you guys think that we haven't talked about, we should be sharing with our audience who will be consuming it later as well and who are attending right now? Anything around this topic which we should have mentioned?
I just want to say I love what you're doing at Tomo Club. Like social emotional learning, I think is so important. Like if not the most important thing that kids learn, how to communicate, how to collaborate, how to get along with people, how to discuss ideas in a like rational, calm way, how to manage their emotions. Like this is, I think that is the foundation of all learning. So I just want to say what you're doing at Tomo Club, I love. And yeah, so
Thank you so much
I
for
would
that.
definitely echo that. And then also add, we need to get parents involved in those conversations as well. Because if we really want to change the way kids think, we have to make sure they're practicing what we try to teach them at school at home. And right now, having common discourse about anything is an impossible thing to do, which is asinine to me and unbelievable. But that's where we are. We disagree on something. We can never find common ground because we're on two different teams. We have to get away from that type of thinking if we're ever to progress as a society and build the type of humanity every kid deserves. And our kids have to learn that from us. And right now, they're learning some really, really bad examples from really, really high places.
Yeah, I'll
Great.
just say again to kind of mirror what resonated with me of both Melvin and Shauna. One, I agree with America was built and made great by its different stakeholders and different opinions, and it was the synthesis of them in public discourse that created our great nation and sustained it for quite a long time. And we have to get away from this mentality that looking different, loving different, being different is all somehow uncongruent and un-American when that's just not true. And I believe better days are ahead of us. But as educators who are tasked with training the future leaders, we need to train those future leaders to be okay being uncomfortable and having their viewpoint challenged. And I think that's one of the great things that TomoClub does, right? It's a gamified environment where kids are problem solving together, having structured controversy, right? Like grabbing the key and getting through a gate and having to coach your teammate to go get the key so you can open the gate so they can go through. That's good, right? That's teaching them in a culturally relevant and meaningful way that's experiential that I think traditional learning just cannot replace. And I think as adults, we often forget that our teachers are just as dysregulated as the students that they're standing in front of, and we have to care for our teachers. Teaching is a very complex, very nuanced job. It's very difficult, and we need to care for our teachers and take care of their basic needs, and then let them go out and feel empowered to take care of students and their basic needs. And I think when we're seeing a shift in that nationwide of giving teachers the credit that's due to them and recognizing that the pandemic affected them just as harshly as it affected families. And I think when we take care of everybody, everybody wins, right? It's like the whole rising tide lifts all ships. When we pour out love on our teachers, then they're going to in turn be more effective leaders. And I think TomoClub does a great job of that, of really educating everybody, parents, children, and teachers on what are these core competencies and then how do they relate to children's everyday lives.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for that. And I have been the first-hand experienced person on that because I've been a incoming guest to the country, and I've seen it all. Like I've worked with people of different colors, different background, different religion, and I have never felt so open to discuss my ideas, literally unfiltered. Of course, with the freedom of speech comes with, of course, being responsible with your communication style, where you take consent, where you understand and you draw the line at places. But at the same time, it gives you the comfort to say it out loud without having the stress of being cancelled. And I have never felt that awkwardness to stop my thought process. And I've discussed with Shauna so many different topics you won't believe, like from anything and everything. And leave aside the political background, I think it's a global phenomena right now across the world. It's not just one country, but I think this extreme polarization is a theme of 2020 and onwards of how to win voters. But apart from that, I think education has always been the gatekeepers of innovation and revolution. And I feel extremely proud to be in this space. And it just keeps me more confident, gives me more power to keep on working in this direction because I've seen that kids having those conflicts and yet coming to the conclusion being more strategically. And what I saw that talking about emotions is difficult. Talking about emotions is hard, but talking it in a game is very easy. So that was my belief, and it has just cemented over a period of time. So yeah, that has been amazing. Thank you so much for talking so much great things about Tomo Club. But yeah, I would, of course, we have very short time, but if anybody has any questions or any suggestions, please, we'll have a couple of minutes to entertain that. They can unmute themselves and ask straight away. No filters there. Anyone? Or we can definitely call it a wrap. Perfect. Thank you all for this discussion, and it was amazing. I loved it, literally to my core.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
giving us the space to talk about this stuff, Avinash. It's great.
Absolutely.
Great
It's a great
discussion.
conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Perfect.
everyone.
Thank you guys for having me. Have a great day and
You
rest of
too.
the
Take care.
great day. Good night. A good day. Bye bye. Thank you, Al. Bye bye. Bye, guys. See you. Thank you for joining in.